Welcome to the school committee meeting of December 14th, 2021. Please rise for the Pledge of Allegiance.
Sorry.
Pledge of Allegiance
To the flag, of the United States of America, to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
All right, with respect to this evening's meeting, it's in-person attendance limited to 18 people. Masks are required. Attendees will need to practice social distancing. The public can also access the meeting via WebEx technology. The Burlington School Committee will hear public comment in person and virtually. Meetings are also broadcast live in the Burlington Cable Access TV. For those wishing to join via WebEx, the meeting number, access code is 2344-229-5178, and the meeting password is Tuesday. Okay, first item on the agenda is the approval of the minutes from the November 16th, 2021 meeting.
So moved.
Second.
Were they in our package? Oh, they came separately, I think.
Yeah.
Moved and seconded to approve them as submitted. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? That passes 5-0. Public participation. I'll just remind everybody that public participation is a period of time that if somebody wants to bring something to the school committee's attention that's not otherwise on the agenda, now's the time to do it. We do have a 3-minute limit for public participation. We'd ask you to please observe that time frame. If not, I'll have to step in. And with all of that said, anybody here for public participation, either in person or virtually? Any hands, Bob?
No hands raised.
Thank you. All right, next item on the agenda is informational reports. Oh, sorry. Figure this out one of these days. Informational reports, subcommittee reports. Anybody have any subcommittee reports they'd like to bring forward?
CPAC has no update.
Okay. Yes, sir.
A town DEI committee met last week after a scheduling snafu, but we're still in the process of reviewing a bunch of documents from the town. Nothing specific to public schools yet, but when there is, I will bring it before us.
Thank you, Carl. There will also be an update on the Fox Hill School Building Committee, but that's an agenda item for later on in the meeting.
Mr. Chair, if I may?
Yes, sir.
I'm not sure if he's having technical difficulties, but Mr. Lozano, who is on video, is looking to publicly participate.
Okay. Mr. Lozano, can you hear us?
Yeah, Bill, we can't hear you. Very, very tiny. If you can get louder.
Can you hear me now?
You want to try one more time, Bill?
Yeah, can you hear me now?
Yeah, no.
Bill, can you try your phone, maybe call in, and we're going to continue with the agenda, but if you get you to so that we can hear you, you can jump in.
Okay, for whatever reason, Mr. Lozano, we can't hear you. If you're able to get through somehow or other, we're happy to let you jump in later on, but I think we're going to have to move on with the agenda for right now. Ways and Means. Roger, do you have anything under?
I'm present. Nothing to add at this point.
Okay.
Mr. Riggs, through the chair. Mr. Riggs, I just want to confirm that you received the draft warrant language.
I received the 2 warrant article drafts. Yes, thank you.
Okay. Thanks, Roger.
Does somebody have
A lot of sort of echo, but so it may be hard to understand, but thank you.
I'm hearing it also.
Does somebody have their device on?
My device is on, yeah, but it's not. Oh, all right, see if that works. See if that helps.
Is someone talking to the mic?
Nope. All right, well.
I'm not logged onto this, so it's not that.
I'm not sure what's causing the feedback. I'm not sure there's anything I can do about it. Student representative, Ms. Hovass, are you with us this evening?
Brooke? Mr. Chair, I was going to comment, hearing you once is enough.
All right, make a note of that.
Is everybody muted, who's listening in? Because it could be an echo from them.
Yeah. Okay, I guess Brooke wasn't able to make it this evening, so we're going to move on to item 5 on the agenda under learning, competing with character. Dr. Conti.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I'd like to invite up Mr. Hart, our athletic director. I think the committee had some questions given some of the press that athletic teams have received, the negative press and some of those situations, and I think while we always need to be on guard for those, I think our high school has done a very good job consistently. I think Mr. Sullivan, Mr. Hart are unambiguous about their expectations for both teams and coaches, and that we view our practice facilities and our games as extensions of our classrooms. So it was sort of a brief statement I made last time, but I know the committee might have had some questions. So Mr. Hart, thank you for coming this evening. I know there's a basketball game tonight, is that correct?
That's correct.
Is there a score? Yeah?
The boys' game is just starting, so there was 0-0 when I walked up the hill.
All right, so I think the committee was interested in some of what you do to encourage character through your coaches and athletes, and I know that's a big part of what high school athletics is about for you. And then if the committee has any questions, certainly you would be available. And I know, again, Mr. Sullivan is also a big part of this as well. He just couldn't be here this evening, so.
So good evening, everybody. I guess first thing we'd like to say is, again, and I think it's a big piece to remember that it's not a one conversation type thing for us. I think that's a big piece, and I think people are looking for that consistency. We're very lucky here in the fact that my newest winter coach has been here for 5 years. My most veteran coach has been here for 30 plus in the winter season. So we don't turn coaches over like a lot of other communities. And that consistency plays a role in what we do. Now, it doesn't necessarily always equate to a win or a loss, but the message to our kids is pretty spot on. And again, from the preseason meeting that we have, and I shared it with Dr. Conti, and it's a lot because, you know, my coaches are, again, that veteran staff who, when I walk into the room to have my preseason meeting and they see there's 29 points that we're going to cover, and because of our lack of turnover, they're hearing the same 29 points again, and the eyes roll and they know what they're about to hear. But the answer to the question is that I think the consistency piece is what helps us get to where we need to be. This year, we instituted, you know, given what was going on in the community, and every time you pick up the newspaper, there's something about sports. And again, it's an amazing piece of the world when we think about the fact that anything that happens in the sports community can become front page of any paper you pick up. You know what I mean? It's the world we live in. It's an amazing piece to the puzzle, if you will. So Dr. Conti, Mr. Porch, myself, and Mr. Sullivan we met with all the student athletes from the winter. We did the coaching with character kind of piece with them. Each one of us covered a little something that was important to us. And I made it a point to make sure that every single student athlete in the stands and the coaches knew, they look at us as adults who probably have never done this before. You know, they say, oh, you know, I'm 50 years old. You weren't an athlete, or you were an athlete so long ago, it doesn't matter now. But the answer to the question is, as I said, you know, that we have a superintendent who participates on the MIA level in a lot of meetings that has, not for himself, but for the kids that go to school here. And we have a principal who's on the board of directors at the MIAA. I'm on the tournament management committee, and sooner or later we'll drag Mr. Porch into something because he'll just be unlucky enough to be dragged in. But the answer to the question is that I think it's a nice piece for them to be able to see us as they think that they're doing it for the first time, where in fact we've kind of all been through it. So I think it was a nice conversation. It was brief, it was to the point. I think the coaches were very receptive to it. But I will tell you that I know people, and I said this to Dr. Conti, this is going to sound terrible, and I shouldn't say this, but there are no guarantees. And if you're looking for one, I can't give it to you. The answer to the question is that we are teaching what we need to teach, we're saying what we need to say, and our coaches are doing the right things. The second step of that is that when mistakes are made, they're teachable moments. And the answer to the question is that it's how we deal with the moment. And the fact that we are dealing with the moment is, I think, maybe the more important piece. So we've had kids and student athletes and regular students and who have all done things in a large realm of pieces that happen at games or anywhere really. And you take the moment, you figure out what happened, and you figure out how to deal with it. So again, if you're looking for me to sit up here and tell you that I swear to you it will never ever happen here, I'll take my 2 cents and leave now because I can't do that for you. Okay, but the answer to the question is that we've put together a really character group of coaches. We have a character group of kids that will at some point make a mistake that we will deal with in a timely and necessary fashion, and then we will hopefully move on to our next piece of the puzzle. So if there's questions, I'm willing to take them.
Questions or comments for the athletic director? Nothing.
I want to thank you for all of the work you do with all the other people who are leading our athletics department with such, I don't know what the right word is, you know, the right kind, the kind of morals and ethics that we're looking for and the kind of leadership. It's hard to figure out how to say this because I know there's so many good coaches and students doing fabulous things and the leadership saying all the right things. And as you say, there are no guarantees. I am just concerned, and this is more of a reinforcement. But I have known long-term beloved coaches who have not done the right thing. So having coaches that have been here before doesn't guarantee us anything. And this is not, I don't even know who our coaches are, so this is not a comment on any of our coaches being a problem. And I know of a couple that I know great stuff about, you know. But I do feel we need to continue to be vigilant. We need our coaches to be aware of what's going on with the students. I know some of the leadership is having students become leaders. But I just want to reinforce that it's really crucial that we keep an eye on all of these areas that are a little bit more likely to go into behaviors that we may not approve of, even though I'm delighted to hear repeated over and over that our sports and our fields and our courts are an extension of our school district and our classrooms. So I want to thank you for all the work, and I want us to, as a district, to be continually vigilant. Thank you.
Anybody else? Christine?
Sean, I just want to say that as a parent and a grandparent, I had a lot of kids go through this school system, and I have never seen anything but the highest quality sportsmanship from the students because of the coaches. The coaches are great. And I would say just if we can keep going the way we've been going for so long,
Thank you.
Anybody else? Sean, I appreciate you coming over. Let you get back to the game, but I would just like to echo pretty much what's been said. I do agree that having an established veteran coaching staff, well, it doesn't necessarily guarantee us anything. It does certainly give us a track record of in a history with these coaches, and they've all done, in my opinion, a good job over all these years. So I'm confident that the community can be confident that things are being done the right way. And as you said, if somebody strays, we'll handle it properly. And that's about all we can get. Like you said, we can't get any guarantees, and I don't think anybody's looking for guarantees. In today's day and age, you just never know. And so all you can do is give the positive reinforcement that we've been giving, and keep our eyes and ears open. And if we see something that's kind of going off track, we got to jump on it and give it appropriate attention. So.
And Mr. Chairman, may I just make a very brief comment, if that's okay? Is that, Ms. Simon, I don't want to give the impression, I know we have to be vigilant about potential negative behaviors, but I don't want to give you the impression that neutral is good enough. I think athletics also provides a great venue for positive examples of citizenship, positive examples of teamwork, opportunities for people to collaborate with maybe folks who they normally wouldn't, for friendships to form. And I know I've had that personal experience in terms of lifelong friends. So I think what we made very clear to our student athletes is that our expectations for them are actually higher. And it's an opportunity that they have that we want them to take advantage of. It's not enough that they just use the opportunity to not do anything wrong. It's an opportunity for them to do something positive and represent the community, represent their families, represent their coaches, represent their school well. So again, I think that's really the message that we had. And I do think it's important. I know Mr. Sullivan came on, and I just want to give him the opportunity, if you can hear me, for sort of the last word, because it really is the principal who sets the tone, and I think he's done a great job of that. So Mark, if you want to make a final comment, and then we can move on.
Sure. Thank you, Dr. Conte. I think Mr. Hart said a lot of it. I think it was important for the kids to also see central office administration, Mr. Porch, and yourself, Dr. Conte, at this meeting. I think it really emphasized and stressed the importance that we're placing on character and integrity and representing Burlington when we're in our pools and at our tracks, in the rink, on the court. Like Mrs. Simon said, it is an extension of our classroom. Mr. Porch really emphasized education first, with student athletes. And I really felt it emphasized it in a very strong way that yourself and Mr. Porch made the effort to be there that afternoon with us, going over those different things. So Mr. Hart does a terrific job, and thank him for putting that afternoon together. We can't remind them enough about these things, and if it's in their heads and they're thinking about it, mistakes are made. Obviously, we can't make promises, but through education, we can stress the importance of these things. And if they're thinking about them, if we're empowering kids to be leaders, they're certainly going to be more inclined to be aware of these things, thinking about it, and making better decisions. So I thought it was a good afternoon. The kids and coaches all took it seriously. And I felt it was a good opportunity for us to manage those expectations, lead by example, and really stress our expectations for them when they're wearing those uniforms and representing the town of Burlington on their different athletic venues.
Thank you, Mark. Is there anybody else from the committee? Sean, anything? You all set?
No, I just hope we're up by 20 on Stoneham right now, so you guys have a good night.
All right, take care. Thank you.
Text us up the score, will you?
All righty. Next item, item 6, under equity. Equity audit update. Dr. Conte.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. We're very fortunate to have Mr. Porch here in person, so I wanted to welcome Mr. Porch to our meeting. And I think we have lots of topics to discuss. in terms of the equity. I think I detailed for the committee the procurement process that we went to. I think the committee was well aware that we were going to conduct an equity audit, which is not, again, shouldn't be unfamiliar to the committee, and want to make sure that I recognize and thank Nicole Kasha for really helping us with the details of the procurement. It was done in a blind way, and that the RFP was placed out, and we had different groups respond to that. We read the responses separate from their costs. The costs, we rated the firms, and then the costs were opened up separately. And there were 3 independent evaluations of the firms, and we arrived at the firm that we were at. And I think Mr. Porch will talk a little bit about the firm and the timeline and how we're going to involve the community. And again, I think that I was pleased with the process, and I was very pleased with the outcome. So with that, Mr. Porch?
Yes. Can you guys hear me okay?
Yep.
So one, thank you for welcoming me to be in a space. I'm usually at home with my grandson running amok. I'm missing him quite a bit, so if I'm a little distracted, bear with me. I'm excited about the firm that we selected. As Dr. Conti said, it was a very organized process. Nicole was fantastic, and I think we learned a lot going through it as well as a selection committee. And so Black Print is the firm that we have, thank you, Ms. Simon, that we have chosen. And principal reason being is that everybody affiliated with this firm has been a classroom educator and a school level leader and a district level leader, which is not commonplace with education consulting firms. And this firm has a wealth of experience and knowledge about instruction, about good school cultures, what culture looks like, organizational design looks like, and has done national level work in this area. So we really are, excuse me, in good hands, I believe. The process itself, what I'm really excited about is we're going to get started. We had to shift the timeline as, we've finalized the selection process. And what we want to do is be very intentional about this firm's introduction to our school district. I know that there's some anxiety about this audit process, even though it's something that was built in before I arrived here. I do think whenever folks come in, it's like when you go to the doctor, right? You're going to have a checkup, and, you want to make sure you're good. But you're a little nervous, right? Everybody a little nervous. You go to the doctor, something might be wrong. So what we want to do is be intentional, and we want to introduce this firm to our community in a very deliberate way, where folks can introduce themselves and say what we're here to do, and get to know our schools and our school leaders and our teachers. And so we'll be very specific about a timeline to do that. We'll set a timeline for the work itself, and then we'll have quarter mark phases where we get data back, and I'll be communicating that data out to our district, and we will be forming some subcommittees so we can engage our community in the process early. I think that's important. I think the communication piece is important. I think engaging people early is important. That way, against this mirror of the plan that I came in with, we can unpack what's actual versus what's not actual. And then we can move forward together in a way that makes sense, where all voices are a part of that process. So I'm excited about that. The main objectives of the audit are here, so folks want to kind of revisit that. You can certainly pass those over. So that's kind of where we are. And as I said, we'll be intentional about introducing folks. We'll communicate it out to everybody. The firm will meet people in person before they start engaging in the work. And then we'll move forward from there.
Okay.
Mr. Chair, just one other thing I want to make sure that I stress, and I think will be part of our communication, and is that an equity audit is is about race, yes, but it's about more than just race. Equity is more than that. So we're going to be, even when we do the community sessions, let's talk about it. I think Mr. Porch is very conscientiously inclusive of our ELL students, our children with disabilities, our neurodiverse students. And so an equity audit is going to be looking at access for all kids and all learners. And so I think that that is part of the introduction of the work in the firm. So again, there are important aspects to this. Clearly, racial dynamics are clearly something that we are going to look at, but we're also looking again at access for our language learners, access for our neurodiverse students, and I think what I appreciated most about Blackprint, this firm, was that they're all educators and they're local. So many of the firms that applied for the work were not from our area. So I think they would know the Massachusetts policy environment well. And I think they can't just drop the report and leave town. So we're going to call on them to really be partners in this work moving forward. So again, I'm excited to start, even though, as Mr. Porch said, a little nervous about it, because anytime there's a firm, especially from outside, they're going to probably have some glows, as Mr. Porch would say, but also some areas of growth that we're going to need to look at. So your interaction with the firm will not be, as Mr. Porch said, just to be handed the final report at the end. There'll be milestones along the way. So an opportunity for you to shape some of the work and the questions. And so again, we're excited about getting started.
And if I could add, this is a firm that's going to stay with us through implementation as well. And they'll be a partner with us moving forward for a bunch of different reasons. That there's a knowledge about our district and a willingness to support us beyond just here's a report, here's what we think you should do, but like this is what you're going to do, and so what are your thoughts and how can we help? How can we add value moving forward beyond the audit as well? That was another big part of this as well for us. Really super important part, so I wanted to name that.
Good. Anybody have any questions or comments on this item? Anybody? Sounds good, Ray. Sounds like you're off to a good start as far as that goes, and sounds like it'll be an interesting several months ahead of us as we go through the process. So I think we're all looking forward to it, and we'll happy to contribute any way that we can, I'm sure. I think we're staying with Mr. Porch here because number B is let's talk about an update.
Yes, so the next session of Let's Talk About It will be in January, post the return from our winter break. And the feedback has been exceptional. The rate in which people are responding to feedback has dipped a little bit, but not too much. We're still very high, 88, 90%, where folks are feeling like they're taking away something positive from the experience. On the heels of the last session, I had a wonderful opportunity to meet with a couple of families here in the district, and one family in particular who really came to the table with concerns, and I was impressed, and I was really happy that they stepped forward in that way. And I'm speaking to that explicitly because I want folks to understand that we talk about inclusivity. That means that folks don't need to always agree. That's a value if we take it as such. So folks feeling different is not a bad thing. I think what happens is it becomes a bad thing because the receiver and how it's received, right? Agreement and understanding don't always have to go together. So it's been a really good process so far. What we're trying to do explicitly is model community. And communities are very dynamic places. And we're hopeful that down the road we can get together in person, get your fingers crossed. But the next session in January, we will continue to one, share what we're doing department level, special education, family engagement, OELL work, and Chrissy Concession is added to the fold, and our CELWA work we will continue to highlight those things on the front end intentionally. And I've talked to those directors, and they're getting wonderful feedback directly from folks in our community as well. So there's a face to the work. So we're building lines of communication. So what we're doing is multifaceted, and we want folks to stay engaged. And we unpack some issues as well, some learning opportunities. And that will continue to be a part of the session as well. You know, we don't want this to be an event where folks feel like they have to, or they're somehow demonized for not doing it, or there's some kind of ulterior motive, because it's not built to do that. It's built to open up conversation and to build learning opportunities and to share what we're doing as a district openly and transparently with intentionality. So it's going really well. The feedback has been fantastic, and we're looking forward to continuing.
Thank you. Questions or comments?
My comment is, again, I just want to thank the committee for your continued participation. You did commit as a committee to continue to have these conversations, and I think the Let's Talk About It provides you that opportunity to continue. So thank you. I know your evenings are often taken, and this is another evening, but I think it shows how important it is if you all are there. So thanks.
Thank you, Ray. Another one, I guess, the next one, item C, Student DEI Council update.
Yeah, and I think this is the one that Mr. Porch is going to be most excited about. So I think we do that, and so I think his excitement is going to be contagious.
I am. So today was our fourth session, fourth information session, and we hold them in the lower library of the high school. And so what they're comprised of is we're doing activities, identity activities with the students. And so what happens is we send out invites through the high school. Mr. Sullivan and his team have been phenomenal. And students come in, and we do these activities, Patrick Larkin and I, and we facilitate. And we've had an average of between 10 and 12 students at every session. And I've been getting up to 8 to 9 emails from students between each session that want to come. Sporting events and different things have become somewhat of a barrier. So I'm writing back, hey, it's okay, you'll make the next one. And so the process looks like 4 to 5 info sessions where you get to learn about what this student advisory is about and what it will entail. The next phase of the process is they complete a writing prompt. So 2 writing prompts are emailed to them. Rosemary's been phenomenal. Rosemary, if you're on, thank you. And so post the info session, they get a writing prompt. And then they respond. We set up a Google Classroom so that they send their writing prompts back to. And so then I'm going to have a selected group of folks help us look at the writing prompts. They're very concrete. One is, what does DEI mean to you? The other is, tell us about an experience that you had that, shaped your thinking as you move forward. So we tried to make them very asset-based, but also questions that students can answer thoughtfully and conscientiously. The next phase will be recommendations will go out to their teachers, to all of their teachers. And again, the recommendations are built on asset-based questions. So there's none of the questions that go into their recommendations are about what they can't do. They're all about what can they do. How do they do these positive things? The last phase will be if we have more than 12 students that are a part of this process, we'll have a subcommittee. And those folks will then go off with a partner that we have, and they will do some team building. Mr. Larkin and I will be a part of that process, not as facilitators, but as members. And we will team build together for a couple of weeks, some here and some off campus. And the hope is that, we learn to be a team. And then the last phase will be, them looking at our district plan and really giving us counsel on what are we doing around DEI. They'll communicate that. They'll mentor and work with middle school and elementary students. It's going to be incredible. It's going to be absolutely incredible. And you folks will get a chance. They'll come to school committee and share out what they're doing while they're doing it. Look for feedback and questions from you guys about their experience. So it's been an incredible experience so far. And we haven't even gotten to the place where we're doing the work yet. So I am pretty fired up about it. So that's kind of where we are with that.
Thank you.
Mr. Chair, just, that is the shortest amount of time that Mr. Porch has ever talked about that event. It's, so I think that's a sign of, no, just, no, I know. It's just great to hear about. I think Mr. Porch clearly values the student voice, and I think that in a structured way, and I think any opportunities we can provide for leadership is valuable. And so, again, I want to thank him for doing this. And oftentimes, Ray shared with me some of the emails that he's received, and they are, again, incredibly thoughtful, deep thinking. Young people are really wrestling with these issues. They really are, and in ways that I have to say I did not at that age. And it's just great that they're having the opportunity to have these conversations, because it is present in their lives. And so just really thoughtful. So thank you.
Yeah, I would say that I'm also learning a ton from our students, not just about whether we're talking about issues or challenges, but just they're pliable. Our young people they adjust in real time so fast. And so I've been fortunate that I get to spend a lot of time with them, and I've been trying to drag him, Dr. C, in as much as I can. They also fill your bucket. Like, we all go through these hard days and hard decisions, and their perspective is very, very different. And there's so much hope in our young people, and so they fill my bucket, and it's very empowering to be around them. I thank them every time I get a chance to be with them. So,
Thank you. Questions or comments? Thanks, Ray.
Great job, Ray.
He's not done yet.
We'll drag him into this too, Mr. Chair.
Equity Communication Translation and Interpretation Policy.
I just want to give some background and just tell the committee the timeline on this is not imminent, but we wanted to get the first reading to you all as quickly as possible. I think the original policy language might have even come from Framingham through a couple other districts. Woburn, I think, was also a contributor. You all know that every few years we are audited by the Department of Elementary and Secondary Education for both our special education policies, procedures, files. We're also audited for civil rights. We have sort of a mid-cycle check-in coming up this spring. We believe this policy is going to be an area that we need to address in regards to translations and providing curriculum material and support for families in multiple languages. I believe this is also being highlighted by our work with our LPAC that, again, Ms. Lamprey is leading. So parents need to get information in a way that's understandable, and many times it's in their primary language. So there may be some budgetary implications to this. I just wanted to give the committee plenty of time, so I'm not looking for approval at our next meeting. I just wanted to get the first reading to you all as quickly as possible. And Patrick, I just want to give Patrick a opportunity if he's on. I know he's in the middle of a class, so he's always we'll see if he's listening.
Thank you. Yes, I'm listening. Can you hear me okay?
We can, Patrick. Thank you.
No, I think you outlined everything clearly, and I think we've made some strides in our communication with families whose first language isn't English, but we still have a lot of work to do. So I think this policy will, make it concrete in regards to what we're looking to do as a school district to support all families. We talk about family engagement a lot, but you can't engage with a family that you aren't communicating with successfully, and that starts with acknowledging and communicating in their language. So again, we can talk more in January, but we definitely don't want to drag this out too long.
Questions, comments?
Yeah, I'm glad we have some time to think about it, and you kind of preempted one of my questions, and that is, do we have the resources to do this? And that includes financial, but also, in order to have properly trained interpreters, are they even available? It's that we're having trouble finding enough staff at the moment. I know that well-qualified interpreters and translators are hard to come by. And so I'm concerned about our plan on how to achieve this. This is a great aspirational goal, but if we choose it to be our policy, then I feel that we're obligated to implement it. And if we don't have the resources to do that, I have some concerns about. I mean, on one hand, I think a lot of this is actually legally required, and so we have to. And then, on the other hand, I don't want to set ourselves up for a policy that we can't implement. So what are your thoughts? And I know Mr. Larkin had his hand
I
up.
think
as well.
Patrick had his hand up.
Yeah.
Yeah, thank you. No, I agree with what Mrs. Simon said. Again, we are piloting some new resources this year that will help us in live time communicate with families that the first language is in English. And again, whether we have the tools or not, or the ability or not, it's still a civil rights violation if we're not communicating with these families who are asking us to in their first language. So it's not an option to not do it. So we can talk more about some of the resources and tools we're using this year and finding success with, and also evaluate where we might need more support. So that's kind of, again, just bringing your awareness to this, and the questions are good questions.
Thank you, Patrick.
Add on, I think the policy is something that's needed and necessary, and it's a technical part of this solution. But we're then hoping as an organization that we should also value communicating with these families. And so, not that a policy isn't necessary, I believe it is, and I think it shows the committee's support of this. But then we also have to make sure that we're welcoming everybody and we're sort of want to do this work and that it's of value. And Ms. Simon, I believe that if it's of value, not just required, then we'll put the resources behind that value. So.
And the implementation of any new process requires that you implement something. And even if you aspire, as you say, Ms. Simon, to do something that the resources don't quite match to, you assess that through implementation, and you can foundationally, back implementation through policy. So I think that that's what the conversation has been, and I think that the resource piece will evolve, and we'll figure out what works for Burlington, and I think that's kind of what we've talked about.
I have another couple of questions. Just for my own interest, this policy is requiring that we send out communications to the district's 4 major languages, and I was trying to see if I knew what they were, but I'd like to know what they are and if they would change from time to time if our populations changed. Do you know what they are, Mr. Larkin?
I don't know 100%, but I believe they're Spanish, Gujarati, Portuguese, and I'm trying to remember the 4th one. I apologize. I don't have them in front of me, but there is flexibility in that. We're not locked into a certain 4. It's based on what our population is.
In our town, there isn't an overwhelming 4, and then all the other languages are smaller numbers. I understand that we have a lot of languages that have a number of families, and I do support that we want to be able to reach them all. So this is only actually a beginning of how to reach all of our families, so thank you for that. And my last question is, in looking at the list, so it's 1, 2, 3, 4, the 5th paragraph lists some of the parent advisory councils that would be included in these. It lists, for people who don't have it in front of them, the idea is that we would commit to communicating information in the language of the families, whether it's a school level communication, a district-wide communication, a building level, school newspapers, et cetera. And there's also, it would also include student report cards, meeting invitations, progress reports, IEPs, things like that. And then there's a section on parent advisory councils, which I think is great also. And I also wonder, and this may be actually a different category, but it occurs to me that I haven't heard about our school councils in a while. There used to be a legally required school council where community members, teachers, and administrators are part of a school council in each building. And I'm wondering if those are still in existence, and if so, would they and should they be included in this list? For example, when it's time for people to apply to be on a school council, if the information should go out in all those languages. For example, I know there's a middle school parent I spoke to last year who's a fluent English speaker, so this language issue wouldn't be relevant. But when we're communicating, he had never heard of, in English, he had never heard of a school council. So to me, this is one part, and a very important part, of how do we communicate with our families, but only one part of it. So I don't know if I asked a couple of questions, so I'll stop for a minute and see if you know the answer.
I'm not sure I remember all of them, but school councils are still part of the regulation.
Okay,
I think
good.
they've been obviously modified as everything else has been over the last 20 months. But as we return to more in-person meetings, I think that your comments were accurate and spot on, that we need to communicate that. We'll certainly look at the policy as this is a first reading. I wouldn't be against including school councils as a part of the groups that we're trying to do this for.
Okay.
Again, it's all about making sure that parents can access and they feel like they belong and they're part of our community. So I think any group that sort of fits in that category, I think we can include, but I don't want to be limited to that. I think the policy's intentions are clear.
Okay, thank you. It also seems like a very thorough policy, so whoever put it together, I'm guessing it was Mr. Porch, and I appreciate that you did that and put the family, got Framingham's example and Woburn's example and whatever, but it does look very thorough, so thank you for that.
Well, we work together as a team on all these things. And I always, Dr. Conti is big on the collaboration, so we all work together on kind of thought partnering with what the policy should look like, and Mr. Larkin has a big hand in that. His family engagement is a big hand in that. Carrie Lamprey is a big hand in that, so it's a one-person kind of deal.
Anybody else? Patrick, one question. At the tail end of the proposed policy, you have some citations and references to both U.S. Code and Mass General laws. Is it safe to assume that much of what is in this policy is dictated by statute, and the verbiage in the policy is kind of molded to the requirements that the statutes put forward?
Yes, that's correct. Dave, again, it's pretty close to what Framingham has as a policy right now, and what Woburn, I believe, just approved. So the legwork was definitely done by others. We've modified it, and to Mr. Porch's point, we all had a part, but Carrie Lamprey has been a big advocate for doing this sooner rather than later.
Anybody else for this item? Not seeing anybody. We're going to move on to 7A, COVID update. Is that you, Patrick?
I think, Mr. Chair, it's going to be both of us. I think we've had a challenging couple weeks, but in that challenge, I think we've seen our staff rise to incredible levels. So I just want to start by thanking our school administration, our nursing staff, and again, even our teachers, I think, have been incredibly flexible this week. I just want to start with one statistic, and then I'll turn it over to Patrick. Patrick, you told me today that we had completed about 2,600 test and stay tests, and of that we had, and actually been fairly recently, about 19 positive cases that resulted from those 2,600 tests. Different from last year, again, that would be close to 2,600 students again, they're overlapping students, but those would be 2,600 days of school that students could attend in person that they would not have been able to attend if we did not have test and stay in place. So I just wanted to give some background. Patrick, I hope I stated that correctly. And again, Patrick has been also part of the triage and has been at schools, was at Francis Wyman the last 2 full days and has been helping. And so again, I know there's been a great team effort there. And again, just Patrick, some questions, because I think some people are making or drawing some conclusions from what they're seeing that I think may not be evident. And then we can talk about that, and then maybe I can express some frustrations to the committee a little bit. So I think that you're well aware of. So Patrick, I'll turn it over to you, but thank you for being at Francis Wyman the last couple days.
Yeah, it's been a quiet year up until right after Thanksgiving in regards to really having a lot of cases of COVID. I was looking back on last year's numbers, and we had 12 positive cases of COVID last year, all year at Francis Wyman. And in test and stay, yesterday we had 6. And we had 10 new cases we became aware of yesterday just at Francis Wyman. So it's really different. Last year, as you know, we'd contact trace, and a lot of times we would close a classroom and move them to remote. But now with test and stay, as Dr. Conti said, we're able to keep these students in school. So we've had 19 positives as of this afternoon when I last looked at the dashboard. And 17 of those, I think, are just since December 1st. So things have changed dramatically since after the Thanksgiving break. I do want to give credit to Mrs. McDonald at Francis Wyman and Mr. Doiron, and again, obviously all the teachers. The nurses have been doing incredible work. Jen Hazen and Leanne are doing incredible work. Just managing this to see the process was really incredible. So I didn't have anything to do with the success. I just jumped in. They're really organized over there. So it was important, I think, to see what it looks like in a school when they're dealing with so many test and stays. So we've tested, I think over the last 2 days, over 300 kids at Francis Wyman. And we've had a few positives. When you test that many kids, you do have a few positives. Today, fortunately, we had 1 positive in test and stay with over 200 tested. So we're hoping that begins to be the trend. What happened at Francis Wyman for the last week or so is something we haven't seen anywhere else. So we're not quite sure why it happened. We can speculate, but it's not really helpful. We do appreciate the patience of families. It's not physically possible to call 200 families in a day when you're doing test and stay on their students. So we've tried to do daily updates through email to all of the families at Francis Wyman, just to let them know what's happening. So again, we don't know what's coming down the road, but I do feel confident with the staff we have in place. And I can't say enough about, again, the teachers. When it was their classroom impacted at Francis Wyman, the teacher would be in the CAF, the kids would be spread out doing some activities, at a table, and we'd move them in and out pretty quickly. So the teachers, the nurses, and certainly the testers we have from CIC have made it look a lot easier than it's been. So I don't really have any. I could go on and on about what I've seen the last 2 days, but I just kind of want to open it up to questions.
Thanks, Patrick. Any questions or comments for Patrick with respect to the COVID situation?
I just want to ask a question, not necessarily related, sort of. I really appreciate the fact that we have the clinics that are being offered at the high school for getting vaccinated. I took advantage of it myself last night. But I know there's still a group of parents who are completely unaware that we're offering this in our community. And I, happened to catch, someone having trouble getting appointments to be vaccinated for their kids and whatnot. And I happened to see it, and I was able to post the link again. So are we sending any kind of reminders out to, through the schools to the parents to, remind them we're offering this as an option of somewhere that they can get vaccinations and boosters?
Again, through the chair, Patrick can jump in. We've been, as part of our weekly video review, we've been mentioning the vaccine clinics. I think the town contacted us and was interested in promoting the vaccine clinics because it's open to the community. Amy Warfield and I had a conversation about putting it on the town's website as well and potentially doing a reverse 911, which would be available to all the towns, all the town's members. I think we were trying to expand the communication. I think we can always do more. Maybe we need to do our own phone messages in terms of dates. There was some concern that all the appointments might be taken, and then we've decided that would be a good problem to have, and then we could always add more dates if we needed to, because we're running them about every 3 weeks based on the time period needed between shots, but there's no reason we couldn't run 2 cycles every 3 weeks if we needed to. So we're trying to do more collaboration with town, and we're trying to communicate more, but clearly if there's a family unaware of it, we're not doing enough. So I'm not, I think maybe we'll ask how people are finding out about it and how we can do more. But again, it is on the town website, it is on our website. I think we're doing it weekly as part of our video communication. And again, we'll be open to any suggestions that we can do.
Thank you.
Anybody else? Christine?
I think what Catherine brought up is a good idea. If it isn't a problem with having everybody, all at once wanting to be vaccinated, and we can't, accommodate so many people. I don't know exactly how it works with the clinics, because I haven't been to these particular clinics. But I would like to encourage anyone who is watching or listening who has not either been vaccinated or whose children have not been vaccinated to please get vaccinated. The numbers of COVID cases recently, the increase in the number is just very disheartening. And, I think that the best chance that we have of protecting everyone is if we all do our part with the vaccine. And if you have children 5 and over, please get them vaccinated. So Eric, if there is a way to notify people, there's a clinic coming up, and if we have too many and we can run it a second day or something, I think that would be so helpful, because so many parents are upset. They're tired of having their kids having to wear masks, and we're stuck with this unless we can get a high number of vaccinations. And the people getting sick and getting very, very sick is terrifying. And maybe I'm just seeing a lot of it lately, but I hope everyone will really pay attention to getting vaccinated, getting their families vaccinated.
Okay, Martha, did you have something?
Yeah, regarding the vaccine clinics, it's my understanding that right now there are no appointments needed. There are no appointments needed. Yeah, so you just need to go. No, you do need an appointment now.
Yeah,
Okay.
you go to the link that we
On the
show up.
website?
Yes, and then you click on another link, and then you select the time that you're going to get vaccinated,
Okay.
and then you have an actual appointment time to show up.
Okay, so so you do need to sign up. And the other question I have is people who need a first, a second, a booster, or a pediatric dose, are the 5 to 11-year-old doses available? And are all 3, the Pfizer, the Moderna, and the Johnson & Johnson, an option?
I'm not sure of the Johnson & Johnson.
Okay.
I know the 2 are, and I
The
also know
Pfizer
there's a flu shot also available.
And the flu shot, okay, good. I think that's important for people to know, because somebody asked me that the other day. Is it Moderna, is it visor.
And the 5 to 12-year-old shots are available too, because someone had asked me that question, and I specifically asked them last night.
Okay, so those different dosages and things are available for people, and you just need to sign up on the website. Great, thank you. Um, um,
Bob?
I'm just sharing this on this screen right here for Mrs. Simon and for the board to see, but yes, when you click on the link on the clinic website, it does ask you to pick the location. Then when you pick the location, it'll give you dates and times. And let's say you do pick a date and time, then the next screen will come up and ask for your information.
And as we look at it right now, on January 3rd, when the next one is there, almost all of the time slots are available. So if people are interested and can't find an appointment before 3 weeks, please take advantage of this clinic. Thank you.
Thank you. And again, through the chair, that link is right on our homepage of the Burlington Public Schools website. It says COVID-19 clinics and reports. And if you click on that, again, on the homepage, it'll bring you right to the dates and times of those clinics.
Good. Thank you, Bob. Anybody else with any questions or comments on this?
Again, Mr. Chair, I just wanted to go over some data with the committee, and obviously the public. So I believe I sent the committee an update this weekend for our high school population. We have 78% of our students who are fully vaccinated. And then our middle school population, so those under 16, we have about 70% of our students, and then our 5 to 11 age group, which is the newest one that was approved. I think they've only been approved about 4 or 5 weeks, if I'm thinking about that correctly. We're at 3%, but I think we have lots of kids who are, I think that number will jump significantly in the next couple weeks as students get their second shots and then have the waiting period after their second shot. So I think those are the numbers. We want to see that continue. I'll just tell the committee, I think the CDC just approved a booster for the 16 to 19-year-olds. If that's the case, and the state then reclassifies fully vaccinated as having 3 shots, our 78% then is going to drop significantly, and then those students that percentage will climb back up as they get their 3rd shot. So the percentages may be a little bit confusing at first, but if when they add a 3rd dose as the definition of being fully vaccinated, you'll see the percentage drop and then hopefully come back up as families get their 3rd shot. So I think those are some of the numbers. The school committee's policy in regards to employees has been effective. I think we have 10 employees that we are still getting information from. Some of these employees are new hires, so we have to track down the information because they are new. Some of them are not necessarily technology savvy, so we're having to contact them personally because this applies to all employees, not just to our educators. So we're reaching out personally to those, have those conversations. And so I know that there are some consequences to the policy, and those are being enacted, but again, out of around 700 employees, I think we're roughly down to 10 that we are seeking information from and confirming that. So I do think the policy was effective, and I would put that percentage, which is sitting around 98%, with any organization our size in the community. So, and that's not just educators; that's all employees. So I want to tell you it was 100%. It is not, but at some point, very shortly, it will be 100%. Mitigation measures discussion. So we had our joint labor management meeting today. I think there was some concern from some teachers, especially some of our elementary teachers. And I also have gotten this feedback from some parents that opening up the cafeterias may have occurred too soon. And I said I certainly own that decision. And if it's really difficult for us to prove whether that was correct or incorrect. We cannot, our cases have gone up, but we can't necessarily correlate that increase to opening cafeterias. There are many other things that are happening. Also, there are many mitigation factors that exist only in schools and school buildings that don't exist in the once students leave school or school buildings. So there are some communities where any place indoors, municipal, private, require masks. And we're not one of them. I'm not making a value judgment of that, but I'm saying it's harder for us to discuss and measure the success of our mitigation factors when they don't exist outside of school. So again, I just want to tell the committee if there were a clear connection, a clear correlation of something, I would acknowledge the mistake. We have gone back to having students at Francis Wyman pick up their lunches and eat back in their classrooms, so we're making adjustments. And again, this is my first pandemic, even though I'm getting a lot of experience with it. Infallibility is not part of the job, and we will look at things carefully and make adjustments. So if that's the case and we're seeing continued increase and we believe our cafeterias are the cause, then we will make those adjustments. But we can't say that right now. We're not testing every student, and our neighboring districts who have had their cafeterias open have not seen significant amounts of spread. So I can't tell you why our cases are increasing. I can just tell you that we're watching it carefully and we've backed off. We've increased some of our mitigation factors, and hopefully we'll see the trend continue. And again, 3 weeks ago, Francis Wyman had no cases that week. So it's not one place or one school, but I can't pinpoint for you exactly what's happening. And I think the response, again, as Patrick said, has been phenomenal, and we'll get there. But I'm hoping we're going to have winter months are going to be more difficult as more things are inside. And again, I think we have the rest of December, January, February. We're going to have a difficult few months, and then I'm hoping the spring we'll see the dip that we saw last spring as well. But it's a challenge to have school be the primary place where mitigation factors are occurring.
Martha?
Yeah, I would like to support that thought. I think it is hard when in the community there is no indoor mask mandate, and our children live in our community, and our parents and our families. And I would implore the Board of Health to reinstate the mask mandate for indoors in Burlington. I think it could help. I do think that the schools are doing what we can, and if there are other ideas of ways that we can mitigate some of these problems, that would be great. We have no say over what's being done in town, but I do know that I walk around, I go into stores, and I see a lot of people without masks. And given that we know that the COVID numbers are going up all across Massachusetts as well as in Burlington, I would hope that the Board of Health would move in that direction and mandate masks in indoor spaces. Like you said, we're still in a pandemic, and we do know there are some effective mitigation strategies, and I'd love to see them used more throughout Burlington. Thank you.
Chris?
I agree with Martha. I think it's nothing that we can resolve, but I do agree with her. But I have 3 questions, and do you want them all at once or one at a time?
Mrs. Monaco, however you want. I'll write them down.
Okay. First, we have different levels of, like the high school, the middle school, the elementary school, different percentages of how many people have vaccinated the children. I wonder, is that showing up? are you seeing far fewer cases at the high school than you see at the middle and elementary? And, you know, do they match up?
I think the last few weeks, as a sample, we've seen fewer cases at the high school that had the highest number of students and adults vaccinated. The middle school saw a bit of a bump, but remember, sixth graders are relatively new to the vaccine. They're on the
Yeah.
top end of the 5 to 11-year-olds. And then we have seen sort of the spike at the elementary level.
Okay. Second question is, how many, we were talking about employees, how many people have legitimate exemptions? And are they being tested weekly as we have required in the policy?
I know I had that answer. I thought it was 12, but let me just. We have 14 employees that have accommodations, religious or medical, and those employees are required to test on Mondays when they come to work. They can test on Sunday night before work if they want to do it themselves. Mrs. Monaco, the process, we set up an email account, and they would take a picture of their negative test, and they email it to the account that we set up, and then Joanne Faust from Human Resources checks that weekly.
Okay, and the last question I have is, are we doing any teaching or any reinforcing of proper mask wearing with the kids? What I'm hearing, not necessarily in Burlington, but in some other districts, is that maybe people get a little lax with how well-fitting the masks are if they're on properly, and that can account for the spread to some extent. So I just wonder if we can do some sort of a reminder of everyone wearing them and wearing them properly.
I don't know what's happening at the building level, to be honest with you, so I would imagine nurses are constantly reminding the students how to wash their hands and probably how to wear masks and all that, but we haven't done anything as a district, Mrs. Monaco, so I'll sort of own that. But I don't want to say nothing's being done, because typically the schools are way ahead of me in terms of how they're communicating with students. In my wanderings around the high school, I do see some lackadaisical mask wearing, but usually when they see an adult, it's adjusted pretty quickly. So, but we can remind folks that proper mask wearing is important. I do think it's the single most important mitigation factor that we have at this time, and my comments about the schools being the only one was not to be critical of the Board of Health or anything else anyone else is doing. They've been incredibly supportive. I honestly think my criticism is based more towards the state of Massachusetts and some of the other decisions that I think need to be made at the state level. There are large-scale communities that have made mask mandates a part of their practice, and I don't think it's necessarily slowed down commerce, and I do think it has been shown to have a real positive impact on reducing spread. So I just think, I know it's challenging, but I just think some of that, we've been sort of talking about this, and my belief is in the next few months, the school requirement, which is going to be revisited early in January, which is coming up quickly, in the near future, that decision is going to be pushed back to the locality. So we're going to be faced with that decision, if not in January, then probably in February as spring approaches. So I think ultimately it's a local decision, and it should be, but I think some of these public health conversations and decisions. It would just be helpful if there were medical professionals making this and not me.
That's one question. Is there a magic number of percent of students vaccinated where it's easier to make the decision not to wear masks? Or, you know, is there?
Yes. So, Ms. Bond, the state threshold now is 80% before you'll even be considered. You have to apply to the state to be relieved from the mask mandate. I think there are approximately 20 high schools that have met that threshold and have been approved. I think those high schools are being monitored carefully and they're being studied. And if they don't see any increase in spread, I think that's going to encourage more districts and may require a relaxation of the mask mandate. But I do think the third booster is going to change what that 80% looks like. And I do think the incentives have to be toward moving parents to consult with their pediatricians to get their children vaccinated. I think that's ultimately how we're going to get out of this. I do think COVID is not going to magically disappear. And I just think the more folks that are vaccinated, the easier it's going to be for us to manage. And the more attention we can put back on instructional best practices. So some of my frustration is we're having to make decisions in schools that I know aren't best for instruction, where I do have expertise. Where I don't have expertise is in the public health arena, and we're having to make public health decisions that I know aren't best for learning. So I think that can be frustrating for me. So, but we'll have to do that. Safety's first. So.
Thank you.
Thank you. I just wanted maybe parents to hear that magic number who may not have heard it. I was aware of it.
Yeah, 80 is the magic. 80 is the magic number before we can even consider looking at lifting the mask requirement. But again, it's in place until January 15th unless there's a waiver. Even if the state says that becomes a local decision, we would bring that decision back to this committee. And I would ask this committee not even to consider it unless we had an 80% vaccination rate, but you all could, make that decision.
All right, anybody have anything else? I'd just like to reiterate and reemphasize, Dr. Conti made a comment regarding the local Board of Health and how great of a job that they've done over these past 20 years and 20 months, both the board members and the staff. And I just want to again thank them. I don't want to in any way make it sound like we're critical of what they've done, because they've partnered with us throughout this whole process, and they've done a fantastic job. So I just want to reemphasize that.
Yes, I agree.
Section 8, Facilities and Finance, BHS standing agenda item.
Mr. Chair, this is the Mr. Cuna section of the agenda. So, Bob?
Actually, before I go, can we give Bill Lozano a chance to try again?
Absolutely.
100%.
Okay. And looks like somebody else has raised a hand after Bill. So, Bill, if you're still available, and you can jump on, please, let's try.
Can you hear me now?
We can hear you, Bill.
All right, great. Thank you. Thank you for your time. I just wanted to get on here, and as a teacher at Fox Hill Elementary and a parent of a student at Fox Hill Elementary, talk about the current numbers at elementary school. I don't know where we got them from, but it was public knowledge recently that there are currently 480 students at Fox Hill. That is only 36 less than Francis Wyman. That is, I believe, 76 more than Memorial School and 208 more than Pine Glen. If any of the school committee members have been in Fox Hill recently, but it is, we are bursting at the seams. Furniture and closets in the hallways, intervention groups taking place in what used to be pods. So offices have taken over our pods, and they're pretty much circular hallways. There is communal space to get kids, for example, fifth grade office did like a wall of fame where we could get the fifth graders together and recognize fifth graders in front of their peers. Right now, we're doing that outside. That's not going to last too long with the winter weather. I know that there is a Fox Hill Building Committee and a Fox Hill school going to be built, but I'm hopefully going to be here for the long run. And I, at this point, am really worried, concerned, what the plan is for the huge amount of kids at Fox. I mean, talking to custodians, they're up to here with, it's becoming pretty unmanageable. If my daughter wasn't in an intervention group and was being seen in a hallway, not in a classroom, not with a closed door, I would be screaming from the rooftops. I think it's incredibly unfortunate. I don't know how we are going to last 6, 7, 8 years without a new school, or without an addition, without some sort of plan, without redistricting. I know that's a pretty, I guess, controversial word, is redistricting. But I don't know, and I'm not sure what the numbers are for kindergarten next year, but if there are 5 kindergarten classes next year, I literally don't know where they're going to fit. Now, one of our music teachers does not have a classroom. If there is test and stay going on, which has been a lot recently, our music teacher is either forced outside or forced to teach in one of our classrooms. So the teacher has their planning time with a music class going on in the classroom. And that's not because of COVID. That's because we have a lack of space. Again, intervention groups being held in the hallways while other kids are walking by, going to the bathroom, while other kids recess, going to lunch. It is far from an ideal situation. And just looking at the numbers, the fact that we have only 36 less kids in Francis Wyman, a school that was built and is built for a lot more kids in Fox Hill, I am extremely concerned about the space at Fox Hill. The halls are more than crowded without kids in them, never mind with kids. So I'm want to make sure that the school committee knows how we can't wait. Fox Hill teachers, Fox Hill students cannot wait for 7 years or 8 years for a Fox Hill school to be built. Is there a plan in place? What is because again, I'm very concerned about the space at Fox Hill right now.
Thank you, Bill. I'm going to jump in. 3-minute limitation had just run out anyway. Obviously, your points are well taken. Certainly, it's something that everybody sitting up at this table is well aware of. It was one of the motivating factors to trying to get approval for a new school, and we did finally get that, but you're right, that's going to be several years before that comes to fruition, just because that's the nature of the beast with the state. We have lack of space in all 4 of our elementary schools. They all have the same problems to one degree or another. And, we'll certainly defer to Dr. Conti and the administration in terms of how best to deal with that in the short term. I know in the past, in the long term, we've done things like portables and things of that nature. So it's going to be it's not going to be an easy job. It's not something that can be cured overnight. It's something we're well aware of. We're going to do the best we can. I don't know, Dr. Conti, if you have anything you want to add to that at this stage of the game.
Bill, I think we're looking at it closely. I think part of the reason for the crowding, and I recognize the similarity between the enrollments that you mentioned, Francis Wyman, Fox Hill, and we've added some Fox Hill staff to try to create some better levels of staffing, and that causes some other space issues. The committee is really committed to small class sizes as well. So some of the classrooms that you've discussed or other folks being displaced, or we've added a 5th section of 1st, 2nd, and 3rd grade. I might have those classes wrong. So I think there is a commitment to smaller class sizes. I think there's part of the conversation tonight on Fox Hill and the School Building Authority, which I think you'll find interesting. I think some of the challenges we're facing can't wait 6 years. So I would agree with you there. So I think we have to do sort of two things at once. Is we have to, I think, continue with our commitment to small class sizes and maybe make some short-term decisions in terms of some swing space or even redistricting. And then really commit to trying to move the Fox Hill project along as quickly as possible. So I don't have a really good answer for you, but I think some of the reasons that we have limited classroom space is we're really trying to prioritize the small class size. So, not a good.
I appreciate that, and that's all to hear was the fact that, the school committee is well aware of this. And there is a possible, at least working towards a possible solution that is not just, we got a new school coming in 6, 7, 8, 9, whatever years. Is that, I don't think this problem is going to make it long before there needs to be some sort of, other solution. With that said, I'm not sure if I'm at my 3 minutes, but I do want to say that I fully support the BEA bargaining team, and I urge the school committee bargaining team to engage and actively engage with our bargaining committee. So I appreciate the time tonight, and thank you very much.
Thank you, Bill. Thanks, Bill. Did you say something else?
I'm not sure if it's related, but Liz DiTucci.
Liz, are you out there?
Hey there, can you hear me okay?
We can.
Thank you. Not related. I just wanted to circle back really quickly and clarify something on the COVID update. By the way, Liz DiTucci, parent of 2 Fox Hill Elementary School students. So I'm concerned because I heard multiple people on the committee use the word spread. And I don't think you meant to say spread in terms of spread within the school. I presume you meant in the community and the numbers going high. So I just wanted to make sure that was clarified.
To the chair, Mr. Tucci. That is correct. We can never say, again, with 100% certainty, we're not seeing school spread because we're not testing every single student. But we're not seeing the characteristics of what we would consider school spread. We're seeing most of the cases are still coming from outside the school district, inside the school district. And so I think your clarification is correct. I think we were talking about increased number of cases in the community and across the Commonwealth. And we're seeing that same sort of bump in our schools as well.
Chris.
Thank you, appreciate it.
Liz, I think I used the word also, and I just want to clarify that I did mean in the community, and I feel a little, caught between a rock and a hard place because I've worked very closely with Dr. Weiner from over the past couple of years with this the COVID issue, and the Board of Health has been great. They've been really wonderful. He's a friend, and he's an advocate for all the things that we need and want. And my frustration is that I really do wish we had a community into a mask mandate, but we don't, and it isn't up to us. But my reference to spread was, in my mind at least, community spread. I'm sure there must be some little bit in the schools, but I'm not aware of it really being a problem. In fact, I have a granddaughter who's still on test and stay. She was exposed in one of the schools, and she's been negative the whole time. So I don't see it spreading within the schools much, but I am concerned about the community.
Thank you, Liz.
Thanks, appreciate it.
Thank you. Anybody else, Bob? Okay, getting back onto the agenda, 8A, the Burlington High School standing agenda item.
Again, thank you through the chair. The Bhs Feasibility Study, while I don't have a full finalized report to give you all, we have done an update to the draft. The second part of that is that we are waiting still for the cost analysis. The cost analysis is the real driving factor behind the feasibility study. So while the other information that we have in the draft is useful, the cost factor is really going to help us decide not only, hey, what the project is going to cost us, but any other triggers or codes that are affected in that process. So again, like I said, nothing really to report back tonight except a couple of phone calls. I may have thrown your committee or your names in as demanding some more response, so hopefully that lights the fire. But again, the company has been responsible. They've been responsive. I don't want to say a lack of workers because they have their employees. I'm sure they're just extremely busy, and the level of detail that's going into this report is a lot. So I didn't get a promise, but I got a strong probability that after the New Year's that we'll have the report. So I'm going to push on that, and hopefully I can come back in January with some numbers. So I think the big topic tonight, of course, would be moving on to the Fox Hill one. So unless there's some questions on the feasibility study.
Yep, that's fine.
Okay. If I can just jump right into that. So we had our second MSBA meeting, which was December 7th. We had good attendance and not the best news to discuss. So the good and bad news is as you all know, MSBA has said to us, we think your district is a contender for a new building project at some level. We need to look at some of your information, which they did, and then they came back to us with an enrollment projection and reviewed the enrollment projection with us. As part of our earlier conversations tonight regarding Fox Hill and the number of students in there, I think there's some differences in where MSBA projects our enrollment and where we project our enrollment. So what MSBA does is look at, the years past, 20 years prior to, they look at our current, and then they use formulas to project what they believe our enrollment will be 10 years from now. Again, they're not looking to build a building today, they're looking to build a building 10 years from now, which could be 5 to 7, but still, they don't want to build a building bigger than needed. They don't want to build a building smaller than necessary, right? So it's a diligent process that goes into play. The question is that nobody has an 8-ball, right? So we may think that the number is low. They may think that their number is high. This is where our community has to either decide that we agree or not agree, but we're at a standstill right now anyways. The next step in the process for us is to either accept or reject the enrollment process. We still have time for follow-up communication, but there's also a deadline in front of us too of February 22nd. So after February 22nd, we have a town meeting in January, which is another deadline for us to discuss. But then if we don't have answers by then, we get pushed out 6-8 months. So this process potentially could turn into, instead of 5 to 7, we could be looking at 6 to 8 and then some. So that being said, I'm looking at Dr. Conti for a second because I don't know if we want some comments first or if we want to dive into some numbers or...
I think the school committee all participated in the MSBA meeting, so my suggestion through the chair would be if we share some numbers with the public, because I think this would be the first time the public has had that conversation, and then give the school committee a chance to respond to that. Does that sound like I'm seeing nods? Is that okay?
Yep.
Bob, if you wouldn't mind, can you grab a camera and maybe put it on the whiteboard that's back there? And I am sort of apologizing. It's handwritten, but that was part of our building committee meeting. Hopefully maybe our audience members will slide around or do something. So maybe we would have to, we're winging this as we go, so go from there. So I know it's still hard to read, but I'll try to interpret the numbers for folks so you can see. So on the left-hand side of the whiteboard. And you can tell I'm not an elementary teacher because my writing is terrible, but as of December 1st, our current enrollment, Fox Hill was 480 students, Memorial was 404 students, Pine Glen was 272, and Francis Wyman was 516. I think Mr. Lozano didn't have those exact numbers, but I think gave a fairly similar description of where we're sitting as of December 1st. So again, roughly an elementary enrollment of 1672. We have, I think there's been some additions, especially at Fox Hill, we just mentioned, about 96 elementary classrooms. So that would be Francis Wyman as a 5 homeroom school per grade, Pine Glen as a 3 homeroom school per grade, and then Memorial and at 4, and Fox Hill technically at 4. And we know we have some sections of 5 we talked about at first, second, and third. But again, in general, those numbers, those homerooms give us about 96 classrooms, and the school committee has always prioritized small class sizes. So we try to keep our staffing levels at about 18 students per class. We know we have some that are 19, 20, and we also have some that are below that. That's what an average is. The MSBA builds their model using 23 students per class, and they apply that model not only to the school that they're building, but to the entire elementary level in town. So what the MSBA projection showed is they showed us over the next 10 years losing 200 elementary students, grades K to 5. So they were projecting an overall enrollment of 1,590 students. They said that they could approve a new Fox Hill at 430 students, but only if that new Fox Hill was part of a 3 elementary school configuration, not a 4 elementary school configuration. So that would require the redistribution of roughly about 100 students into Francis Wyman and about, I'm doing the math on top of my head, about, 70 students into Memorial. So remember that they are dropping our number of elementary classrooms in their model from 96 to 77, and because they're operating at 23 students per class. So we came up with a list of questions at the building committee, and understanding that the MSBA has to have a model that applies to all communities, not just to Burlington. And so, again, we respect that they have their 23 students per class. But again, I just want to remind the public that that 23 students doesn't just apply to the new school. They would apply that model across the entire community. So it would impact the new Fox Hill Memorial as it exists and Francis Wyman as it exists. And they are contending that we don't need a 4th elementary school. We don't need Pine Glen. Looking out 10 years. And so the questions that we had for the MSBA is they would allow us to keep Pine Glen as a school for swing space during construction, but we weren't sure if that meant that we could keep it beyond the opening of a new Fox Hill school. We also were asking them whether they based their model on 23 students, but if the community wanted to pick up the extra cost for the additional classrooms, whether they would allow us to build a larger school, for instance, but just pay for a smaller percentage of the project, and the community would pick up a larger percentage, or whether we had to accept a consolidated model, a 3-school elementary model with their class sizes, or else they're not going to partner with us on the project. So those are the questions. We have an upcoming meeting, Bob, we're trying to schedule with the MSBA. And then honestly, the decisions being moved forward, recommendation by the building committee and ultimately the decision by the school committee would be based on, I'm sure, some of the answers to the questions that we just posed. And then the committee would need to decide. I do think I want to stress for Mr. Lozano and any of the other Fox Hill parents or teachers listening is No one is saying we don't need a new Fox Hill. So we're saying we definitely need a new Fox Hill. I think the decisions that we have to make in the coming months are going to be dependent on the answers we get from the state and what value the committee has on some of the decisions we may need to make in regards to class size, and knowing that this decision may impact all elementary schools, not just a new Fox Hill. So I just want to make sure, I hope that was clear. This is the second time you've all heard that. And so, Mr. Chair, Bob and I will try to answer questions as best we can, or if there are comments, we'll do what we can.
Sure, thank you. Questions or comments? I've got a couple of comments if nobody else is. The thing that in the first meeting with the MSBA, and then as discussed further in the building committee meeting, that kind of jumped out at all of us. One was their projection of enrollment was going to decrease, which, I'm not sure I necessarily agree with that, but I'm clearly not, that's not my area of expertise, and, they put it into whatever formula that they use, and that's what they came up with. So, that might be, whether we agree with it or not, that's going to be a reality that we're going to have to deal with as we plan this, because they're the ones making that determination. To me, the more, I think the issue, in my mind anyway, that's causing more of a problem from a space needs standpoint is their 23 students per classroom dictate. And we had this discussion with the MSBA reps when we had that initial meeting. And their point, which I don't necessarily disagree with, and I certainly understand, is they try to be uniform across the state. They don't think that it's fair that Burlington gets to design a building averaging with 15 kids in a classroom, while some other community might have to have a building that has become more dense or crowded. So I certainly understand that theory. However, it wasn't that long ago that we did the memorial school and the middle school, and I certainly don't recall that coming up at the time. So I don't know if that's a new criteria that they're using or whatever, but that's also a reality that we're going to deal with. The one thing I think we have to make sure that they understand is, when they talk about classrooms, it's not just 23 kids times however many grades there are in the school and hit you with a number, because program-wise, we have a lot of other use for space in the buildings. We have special, we have the lab classrooms that use a lot of our space. We've got ELL classes, we've got music and art and the other, those types of programs. So I think from my standpoint, the main thing, as we have a follow-up with them, is to make sure that they understand what our actual needs are space-wise within the building and the other uses other than just regular classrooms that we put our buildings to, because that should clearly factor into the discussion as well. So the questions that Dr. Conti just outlined were discussed pretty thoroughly at the building committee meeting last week or whenever it was. And those were the consensus, that that's the kind of information that committee is going to be looking for as they kind of shape where we go from here on. So hopefully we can set up that meeting with the MSB people sooner than later. Martha?
I want to, it feels almost too early, because we're still trying to figure out what is going to be what will be an option with MSBA. We haven't heard back about all the questions we had. Will they allow us to build a new Fox Hill with the numbers that we believe? And because MSBA doesn't always pay for everything. They pay a percentage, for people who don't know. And if we wanted to build a new Fox Hill with a swimming pool, they would not reimburse us for a percentage of the swimming pool. So the question is partly, if we think we need an extra 10 classrooms more than they think, will they let us do that? Will they let us do this if we don't close down Pine Glen. Will they let us do this if we don't add 100 students to Francis Wyman or 80 students to Memorial, that kind of thing? And so those are the questions we need to hear. We're not feeling real hopeful about it, given I did listen into their conversation, and they're pretty certain about what they think our numbers are, and that they can only, support us financially in terms of 23 students per class. And even if MSBA does support us, the town of Burlington does have to pay for over 50% of this. And we're a town with pretty good finances, and we have a 10-year capital plan that has some money set aside, that we knew we were going to need a new Fox Hill. We know we're going to need a new Pine Glen. We know we need the high school renovation. So some of that money has been set aside in the 10-year capital plan. And yet, it may end up being that we might have to pay for a lot more than 50% of a new Fox Hill school. Maybe we'll decide maybe we won't be able to build a new Fox Hill school if the school committee and the community feel it's really important for us to keep 4 neighborhood schools. So the thing that may be too early, but I want to put out there is, as a community, does Burlington want to support financially 4 elementary schools, a new Fox Hill, which, as an aside, we all clearly believe and know we need a new Fox Hill, and Mr. Lusano, whatever we can do to make that happen sooner than later is, in my mind, a good thing. But we may need to gather our forces as a community and make a commitment to support these building projects in order to provide the education and the space and the environment that we feel is really crucial for helping our students to have healthy, safe, environment while they're learning. So it's a little bit ahead of where we are, but I think it's important for us to be thinking about, because money is, expensive. I mean, these things are expensive, and that's not something I take lightly. But we may end up having to come to the community and talk about, are we willing to finance more of this than we wish we had to? Because the MSBA rules turned out to be very different than what we were expecting. So I don't want to be, I hate to be a downer, but I feel like that's what I'm talking about. But I also think we can gather together and support this in terms of providing a really high-quality education for our students in high-quality buildings. Thank you.
Thank you. Christine?
Having been down this road a couple of times, I would say the likelihood of their numbers being even close it's not a very strong likelihood. When we built Memorial School, we had to use SBA numbers, and they were low. Memorial was overfilled the day it opened. And I think it isn't that SBA doesn't do things right. I think they just don't know the personality of Burlington. And Burlington is a community where we have a lot of older homes which are being sold, many being torn down. We have a lot of young families coming in, a lot of big houses going up, and we're just not the typical community that they deal with, in my opinion. So for them to restrict us to having only 3 elementary schools and to restrict us to having average class sizes of 23 students, I think is unfair in both counts. But B, it's never going to work, because our numbers from NESDEC show that we will have probably an increase of 200 kids, not a decrease of any kids. So I'm beginning to wonder if maybe the new rules that SBA is working under have been kind of developed in order to be equitable throughout the state,
but with an eye towards the communities that have greater needs than Burlington. And that instead of always now putting off our buildings until we can get approved by SBA, maybe we're going to have to go through some of this without a lot of help, and possibly even without any help from SBA. I don't want that to be the case, but we would get our building a lot sooner. We would get the building that we need. We would not have the dictates of how many schools we could have and how many kids we'd have to have in a classroom. So my bottom line is, I believe we will need more space, not less. And I believe that we should not consider closing Pine Glen School, because I think we need it now and we will need it in the future. And I think we have to do what's right for the town. What we've always done is we have, our education is a priority. That's why it's such a great town, partly at least. So we need to do what we need to do. And we'll do the very best we can with SBA, trying to get some help, but if we can't get it, we can't get it.
Thank you. Carl?
Do you guys have a sense of when MSBA is going to give us the information we need to make some of these kind of decisions?
But we have a meeting planned for next week, I hope. Is that?
It looks like right now Tuesday is our meeting, but.
Okay.
I just wanted to make a comment, if I could. I know that there were a lot of other questions that were asked, too, in terms of, again, I don't think our hopes are very high of being able to defend, that we feel that we'll have more students down the road, but we were asking questions like, how many projects have they funded where the same thing happened as it happened with us, where we outgrew the school before the kids moved in. And so we're trying to get some of those statistics together, if we can, to help plead our case, even though we don't hold high hopes that that's going to help. So I just want to kind of throw that out there, that these kinds of questions were asked at the meeting.
Thank you.
So we will ask the questions. Again, I think the MSBA can be very supportive. Ms. Bond, the idea of outgrowing is relative, because they would tell you that at 23 kids a class, you're not going to outgrow the school, and the school was opened with plenty of capacity. So I think it really depends on your perspective. Mr. Chair, my understanding is right now the MSBA's recommendation is in conflict with a vote by this committee. I do maybe listen half the time to you all, and so my understanding is this committee took a position that you wanted to maintain 4 elementary schools. So if we don't get the answers that we, in support of 4 elementary schools, or moving more of the cost to the locality, then it would require action by this committee to change your vote if we were to move forward. So and that would need to happen before February 26th, which is the MSBA board meeting, which would be their board meeting moving forward. So I know that's very technical stuff, but that's what we're doing. We did prepare 2 warrant articles, as we discussed with Mr. Riggs at the start of the meeting. One of the warrant articles is using the MSBA language, which would prepare us for their February board meeting. The other warrant article is a placeholder for the project if we were to move forward without the MSBA. So we have both warrant articles in terms of prepared and ready and in the warrant because of the deadline for January's town meeting.
Along the lines of some of the questions that we had that we're waiting for answers of, but I was reading the paper the other day that Stoneham High School has been recently approved and is going to start building a new high school for, I think, $190 million. And I was reading it, the MSBA contribution to that was about $40 million, which was a pretty low percentage, because I would assume they're in the same percentage category we are, which is about 45%. But then reading through it, the description of the school that they're building, they're including a wing for potential early childhood classes. There's some athletic facilities and things that typically, point being is that there are clearly some add-ons there that brought the cost of that project up to $190. And apparently, MSBA said, here's what we're giving you this amount, which in their mind, I assume is 45% of what they need. Stoneham has made the determination that they need more than MSBA was willing to contribute to, and it appears that MSBA gave them the money that they would otherwise give them and allowed them to go over and above that on their own dime. So, and again, I'm reading between the lines a bit in the article that I read, but it sounds to me like taking what they'll give us and then adding on to it as we see fit is potentially an option. And as Christine mentioned, that means that the town of Burlington's contribution to this project will be higher than we otherwise thought, and that's going to be a discussion that we'll have to have with Town Hall and the finance team and ultimately town meeting. But it sounds to me like the threshold question that we had at the building committee meeting was, can you even do that? And it seems to be that you can, but I guess we'll find out for sure. Any further questions or comments on this particular issue? Our next meeting is not until January. By then, we'll certainly have some feedback from the MSBA. And the next school building committee meeting is sometime in mid-January as well. So all this stuff will start to crystallize over the next few weeks. And as Eric just pointed out, we'll have some decisions to make leading up to town meeting and then shortly thereafter. Anybody out there, Bob?
Through the chair, no one with their hand raised.
Okay. Anybody in? No? Okay. All righty. School lunch. Mr. Kuna.
The only thing new that I was going to update, Dr. Conti already mentioned, unfortunately with the increase in testing at Francis Wyman, we have moved lunches back to the classroom there. Besides that, no news to update on lunches.
Again,
Dr.
just...
Conti, anything else?
No, again, just the compromise was students are walking down and getting their lunches, so we're not packaging individual lunches, so I think we're trying to find a compromise, and then students are walking back and eating their lunches in the classroom. So, again, it takes some time, but I think that was the way it could work for us and on short notice. And again, Mrs. McDonald and Mr. Doan did a very quick adjustment, so thank them for doing that.
Okay.
So, no, I don't have anything else on the agenda other than to, I know that Hanukkah's passed, but we have Christmas coming up, so just wish everyone who celebrates that a Merry Christmas and a happy and restful winter break. I think our staff are ready, and I think it'll give us some time out of the buildings and give us a chance to recharge. So, and I always feel like I've lost 2 years of my life. I go back and say, when did that happen? And I think it was last year, and it was like 3 years ago. And so it's going to be, what, 2022? That's going to be, I can't even imagine that. So, but I thank you to the committee, and we'll end 2021, I think, in a positive way, and we'll start again. So thank you.
Anybody have anything they want to bring forward? There's no need for executive session this evening?
No, sir.
Chair will entertain a motion to adjourn.
So moved.
Second.
Moved and seconded, all in favor?
Aye.
And we are adjourned.